Hey there, this is going to be a review for Cast Crusades session number 64. We had our 5 core players, the characters Lork, Barry, Sprawl, Cosmo, and Renee. Picked up where we left off from session 63. They're in the northern wood at the crypt of the elf maiden Honorial. They rest there overnight with the plans to continue north to reach the pass of 10,000 steps, which is located in the God Peak Mountains. they, there is some debate before they leave about, not really debate, but they make some plans to kind of try to conceal the crypt. What their thought was just to keep it safe, because Honorial is inside in some sort of stasis, and they don't want her to be harmed. They do that. Lork's able to use some of his skills as a ranger to add some concealment. It's in an overgrown garden anyway, so it wasn't really hard to do. They move on. The trip takes 3 days of game time. Kind of breezed through this. We didn't do a lot with it. I did roll for random encounters and nothing came up, so they had some easy camps. And they reach, eventually, the ruined village that Moira, the woman that they rescued from the fire giants way back in the Underdark, is from. They can tell it was definitely hit by giants. It's just smashed. Not a very big village. It's off from the main, the Northern Pass road, and it just utterly destroyed. They do come across a couple individuals, actually 3 individuals, there picking through the ruins, and they go on to, these people they look native to the area, they're human, and they talk with them for a little bit, and come to find out they're survivors from this village. They've moved into the forest, and are just trying to find stuff, supplies and stuff like that, without really any success. This place didn't have much to begin with, and it's been picked fairly clean, or anything of value was destroyed by the fire giants. The party urges them to head south, maybe go to Algan or whatever, but they're kind of adamant that this is their home, and they've survived in these woods, so that's what they plan to do. After that, the party continues on. They find a trail leading out of the village that leads to the pass of 10,000 steps, which is marked by this stone archway. And they start up it, and it's just the mountain in front of them, the peak, they look like the trail goes towards. They can't see the peak. It's completely enshrouded in clouds. They've seen the mountains. They're in the God Peaks. A lot of them, most are snow-capped because they're so high. So they know they're in for it. The temperature has definitely dropped in this area. It's late summer in our time frame right now, but they're so close to the mountains that it's not punishingly cold, but it is chilly. So they prepare for that. They were prepared for that to begin with. So they start to climb, and that goes on most of a whole day. For the first day, it's actually going to take them a bit. They did suffer some fatigue. I had them roll some constitution checks. Some passed because they have mounts, or some just passed. I don't remember who did what, but I think everybody that was walking kind of felt it, except maybe Renee. I think he might have constitution as a prime. Maybe Steve can chime in the comments. I don't have a copy of his character sheet, so. And this was actually kind of inspired by some real life events. I had just recently gone backpacking for the first time in a long time, and we didn't do a big mountain, but it was bigger than we expected, and I felt it. So I was like, well, this makes sense. Why don't I add this to the game? So I did. They're able to, though, they know they're not going to make it in a day. So on this pass, Lork starts to look for a place for them to rest. And I want to say Bryson rolled a natural 20 on his on a check to see if he could find something. So I'm like, yeah, you find a cave, we found actually a really decent place. So they were able to rest for the night, stay out of the elements, which is starting to be a factor with snow. And they rest for the night. They strike off the next morning, continuing on. There's some banter in camp as usual, especially with Rene. He's really good for that. I think he was preparing meals and such, and it was good. But they strike off. They're getting into where it's much more snow, and eventually they're Lork and I think it's Lork and Barry actually are up ahead, and the guys will chime in. I don't remember why Barry was up there with him. I don't remember why they did that. I know Barry actually and Sproul have been using spells like Endure Elements, which makes them not susceptible to cold. That was a huge benefit, so we didn't have to really factor that part in. I don't remember why Barry was up there with Lork, but it might have been a mistake, because when they're up ahead and they're a decent range ahead of the rest of the party, they're attacked by two frost giants that start throwing. They're up above them and they're throwing rocks, these huge boulders down, icy boulders down the path at them, and then they also two winter wolves are let loose and are racing down the path at them. So it isn't long before I think Barry got really hurt by the rocks, really hurt. Lork, I think, took a little bit of damage and then was soon, he got on Fenris and charged in, was trying to get closer to him, and then he ended up engaging with the winter wolves first because they met in the middle of this path. Meanwhile, up above, the frost giants are raining rocks down. Barry gets hit he hits the fire giants with a fireball spell, which really hurt the fire giants because they are susceptible to fire, or vulnerable to fire, so that really hurt them. So the effect of that was they also focused on him because he did a lot of damage to them, so they started focusing their rock attacks on Barry and quickly squashed Barry down. And Barry, he tries some defensive maneuvers, turning invisible, which worked, I think, for a round. But eventually, when he casts a spell, invisibility goes away. They hit him with more rocks and end up dropping him to like -7 hit points. Meanwhile, while this has all been going on, the party has heard the rocks, and the winter wolves have howled and done their thing. So the party's aware that something is going on. So they're rushing to get up with Barry and Lork, and like Rene. He has Boots of Haste, and so he activates those, which is really good for a dwarf because dwarfs have really not a lot of movement in Castles and Crusades. He's triple moving now, and he doubles it, so it's like really good. So he ends up, I think, being one of the first ones there. Sprawl's mounted on his goat, his giant war goat Brovis, which is perfect for these elements. Like he had no problem navigating this terrain. So they end up getting up there in time to help Barry and Lork. Lork's working his way through the winter wolves. Rene, though, goes right by them all and sees the giants and is like, need to get there, and just blows by that combat to get to the giants. And he does engage with the giants in melee. And there's two of them up there. And being a dwarf, he gets a bonus to his armor class against giants. So he's really tough to hit, like when I use giants against him, because with his armor, that new magical armor that he got in the Underdark, plus that bonus, he almost has, I think he has a 28 armor class, which is really high. He does suffer a couple hits though. They do get through, but I mean, I had to roll really high to get there. And he starts taking damage, and eventually he's joined by Lork, and they start bringing down these giants. But before that happens, there's a cave. I described we use this terrain that's in front of you here. Didn't use a lot of terrain for this session. Haven't been doing that lately, but we're gonna get back to it. I described a cave mouth being here, a large cave mouth. So coming out of that, this is one of the early frost giants that they faced. This is a miniature I painted up. This is by official D&D miniature. It's a Gale Force 9 miniature. I have two of them. I think they're both different. They're both different But I painted both of those up. And where'd he go? Oh, got a big collection of miniatures behind my screen. There's another one here. Give you a little closer view of that. Those guys are pretty cool. Anyway, this one comes charging out. Now, this is just a pre-painted WizKid miniature. And this is a Frost Giant, I think it's called Everlasting one. So the backstory with them, these are from actually D&D 5th edition, Volo's Guide to Monsters, which the original version of that book is probably the best book, in my opinion, that Wizards of the Coast for 5e ever put out. I really like the work they did with the giants, the hags, everything. A lot of everything in there was really, really good. So I still use that book. This is an Everlasting. He's got like 3 heads. And yeah, 3 heads. Looks like he collects other heads. But the backstory with them, if you're not familiar, is at some point Frost Giant killed a troll and eats it, and then it mutates into this. I think that's it in a nutshell. But this comes out, and it's a little bit tougher than the rest of these Frost Giants, which the party has started to bring down. And this one attacks Renee. He also starts scoring hits. So Renee ends up getting kind of beat up in this fight. I think by the end of it, he was down to, Barry was at -7, getting rescued by Sprawl. And before the final one was brought down, I think Renee was like down to 4 hit points. So it was a pretty tough fight. That was a pretty tough fight. But ultimately, they are victorious. They search the cave. They do find some treasure in the cave. And one particular item, there was mostly gems and gold coin. But they do find one magic item, which was this little like necklace pendant sphere set in a gold chain. And they rest in this cave. They determine that this is the number of Frost Giants who are there, so no more are coming back. So this is the best place they can find to rest. And the past continues on from this area. They rest. But the magic item was actually a Jewel of Wisdom, which gives a bonus to your wisdom attribute. So Sprawl takes that. The party is in total agreement that he should have it. And he takes that. And that bumps his wisdom to like 20. So he has a really good wisdom. Got him another 4th level spell. So that's really good. Good boost for his character. They rest for the night. Again, no roll for random encounters, none. And then they head out in the morning. And eventually they clear the clouds of the peak. And it's a totally different environment. And I wish I could show you. Maybe I'll post it on the channel in the commentary section or whatever the hell it's called. The picture I use, but they come up out of the clouds and there's spots of snow, but like it's actually the temperature's different. And above them are like floating, massive chunks of floating rock, and they literally see this castle on these rocks, and the rocks are connected by bridges, and except to the oh no, that's incorrect. Yeah, they're all connected by bridges, so they make their way up them, and then they get to the last one, the last floating rock before the castle, and there is no bridge, but there's a obvious portal, and flanking the portal are 2 cloud giants, and I described the Frost Giants. Cast Crusades, for some reason, I don't know, I'd have to check all their giants, but like in the description, they're only like 14 feet tall, which isn't the version I use. Like they're like 21 feet tall. They're some of the tallest of giants. But cloud giants are even taller. They average around 24 feet in height. So the party's like, holy crap. There's 2 of them, and they look like they're dressed kind of like Roman gladiators. And they hold these massive spears. And as the party approaches, ever so cautiously, they cross the spears in front of the portal, barring entry. They come up, they speak to one of the giants. I don't know, I think it might have, if it was Barry or Sprawl that did that. It might have been Barry. Might have been Lork, actually, which is really odd. Lork kind of the impromptu, I think, de facto party leader, which is interesting because he has horrible charisma, but we base that mostly on his half-orc appearance, not so much his personality. But they speak to and they say, hey, we're not here to fight. We want to meet with Nezna the Beautiful and seek her wisdom. And one of the giants produces a bell from his belt and rings it. And it's, I mean, to them, it's not a big deal, but to the players, this thing's massive, you know, and they ring it. It's super loud. And then shortly thereafter, exiting the portal, they see this figure, and it's this 7-foot tall figure. He's got like ebony black skin, golden orbs for eyes, and he's androgynous, like he's not male or female. He comes up, he introduces himself as Quellen, and that he is basically the major domo for Nezna the Beautiful. They speak briefly, and he agrees to allow them into her castle. There is one caveat, though, is he's like studying each member of the party, and his eyes rest on Lork's sword, which is basically, its name in common is Jotun Slayer. It's a giant slaying sword. And he tells Lork that he has to leave his sword behind. He cannot bring it into Nezna's castle. And Lork agrees. He turns the sword over to Quellen, and Quellen in turn gives it to one of the frost giants, and they place it. And Quellen, you know, he says, you have my word; it will be returned to you when you leave. So they go in. Quellen. Oh, and flanking Quellen are two massive lions, big maned lions. You know, and so they all turn and enter the portal. And then they're in Nezna's castle the next thing they know, and their stomachs settle from the ride and teleportation, which I describe as like being in an elevator and having it drop out underneath you. And not everybody in the party, their characters have teleported before. Lork and Barry have. I think that might be it, but now everybody has, so they all share that experience. They're in this large hall of like polished marbles, and there's paintings and just wealth, in this place. There's statues lining this hall of like kind of like Greek, almost like not Greek specifically, but in theme like a Greek god type stuff. But they're all giants, and they're led up to basically this set of doors. They pass through the doors, and they're in Nezna's throne room. This is another massive room. This one's lined with pillars, and on the wall, on the walls, covering the walls, are these are Venetian masks, which are like those masquerade ball type masks, and they're all different designs, but they all share the same thing, that they are incredibly valuable. Like there's gems and embedded in them, and some of them are made, the material they're made out of is, could be anything, gold, platinum, just such fine crafted work. At the far end of it, on a raised up a set of stairs, is the throne, and there sits Nezna the Beautiful. And I have a picture. It's basically there's a cloud giant called the Smiling One in Volo's Guide for Monsters, and I used her. I actually didn't use that picture. I used another picture that came up for a female cloud giant, and she's sitting there. She's holding one of these masks. Actually, it is the Smiling One, because she's holding the mask. The Smiling One always has those masks. Anyway, she's flanked also by two even bigger lions. There's balconies to each side of this room that just from what the party can see, is just open air. And her throne is golden, and embossed on it are more of these masks. And she greets the party, and in a nutshell, they had decided ahead of time that they were not going to lie to her about why they were seeking the information that they would seek. That they're seeking. They're trying to find out what creatures they can get these hairs from, and she kind of studies each party member. Like she's like more than just like looking at the surface level of them. Like she's getting a little bit deeper understanding of each one. Let's see. So she ends up telling them that I think they started off, they wanted to learn like what evil creature could they get hairs from. And she tells them of a this being called Zalexis, which is a Lamia queen that lives in her what's called the Bone Peaks, which is in the God Peaks. It's a mountain in the God Peak mountain range, but it's called Bone Peak, and she lives there. And they're like, you could get the evil hairs from her, but be advised, she's going to ask you to do something for it. But that's who she'd recommend. So they're like, okay. And then for the good one, they asked for any suggestion, and again, she studies the party, and she's like, I think you already have something in mind, and it will work. And what she's referring to is they, in the previous session, they had wondered if they, got an Oriole out of her state, took care of, basically killed off the Serpent King, and an Oriole was able to come out of her stasis, if they could get hairs from her. And above board, that was something that they came up with at the in the game during the session that they started talking about, and I thought was a friggin' awesome idea that I had not intended. That was just kind of an encounter I put in there to slowly introduce elves to my setting, to the party. But I thought that was a great idea, so I was like, yeah, that works. And so that's what she recommends. And they ask about the Serpent King, which is like this, and they're like, she's basically like, it's the Lenorm King, and it makes its home in the elven ruined city of Assyrian, which I think that's the name of it. I have it in my notes, but Assyrian. And if they defeat him, likely that will work. They ask about, like Barry asked about if the Serpent King has any known weaknesses. Not really, like it's not super vulnerable to anything in particular. But she does tell them that or if she didn't, she should have. They're very, like the Lenorms are very physical. Like they're kind of like dragon-like, but they're not dragons. Especially, she does mention that, like, the dragons she knows, she says in passing, would not consider Lenorms dragons. That would actually be kind of an insult. They're much more physical and like beasts, but intelligent beasts. So that was that. She actually takes them out to one of the balconies and does this thing where, because she offers to show them where Bone Peak is. And they at first they have this great view, but it's all clouds. They can't see the land below. So she uses some magic, and this opening opens up in the clouds, and it's almost like a telescope. Like she zooms in on this peak, and they see this peak of this mountain, and it's the entrance of Zalexis's lair is like this giant skull, and you go in through the open mouth to enter her lair. So they have a kind of a decent idea where it is. So they make plans to, they're going to go to Bone Peak first, and then Assyrian, and deal with the Serpent King, and then hopefully get the hairs that they need to make the brush, so they can join the two pieces of the rod that they have together. They did ask her in the beginning. They actually, Sprawl gave Nezna the rod to examine, and she holds out like a finger, and Sprawl places it on her, and they ask her if she knows what it is, and she does. She absolutely does know what it is. She gives it back. She doesn't keep it or anything, but she offers also at the end to basically teleport them back to the base of the mountain, so they don't have to do the steps, which they're all thankful for, especially Cosmo, because he has not enjoyed walking up the pass at all. Not his thing, even though the rest of the party's telling him it's basically good for him because he needs to lose some weight. But yeah, there was something else that happened there. Oh, the players, I think, and their characters were really curious about Quellen, because I had never introduced a character like that before. They have no idea. Like, they'd ask, like, do we know what he is? And like, nope, you have no idea. And even above board, my son and I were discussing it later after the campaign, and he was really curious, and he was like, and I was like, you'll never guess what he is, because I've never used it. You've never seen it in any book. It is in the books. It's actually from the some old D&D stuff. But they do ask Nezna about him, or it, Quellen, and she won't divulge like his backstory. She just says that he's it's from a very like they're kind of secretive, so it's not really her place to divulge who or what he is. It is. So they also asked, I don't remember who did it. It might have been Sprawl. They also asked if her hairs would work and to use for the brush, and she says no, it would not. And that kind of revealed that she's more neutral than good or evil, because they know that the hairs have to be from a powerful good creature and a powerful evil creature, and the caveat is that they have to be freely given. So, but Nezna's like, no, my hairs won't work, which that would have been too easy. So, so she's more neutral in her alignment. So they're brought back to where the two cloud giant guards are by Quellan. Lork's sword is returned to him, and Quellan actually teleports them to the base of the mountain, saving them, a couple days travel back down the mountain, which they, again, we're very grateful for. And that is pretty much where we ended the session. Good session, a lot of fun. One of the highlights of it is we do XP after every session, and Cosmo actually reached 8th level, so he's now at 8th level rogue. So that's our first 8th level character. And it was funny because afterwards, my son and I were doing some calculations, because the bulk of the party is 7th level, with Renee being the only one that's 6th level, but he's pretty close to leveling up. But the way Cast Crusades, not like modern D&D or Pathfinder, where everybody's on the same XP chart. Not in Cast Crusades, very much like old school D&D. You have different classes, have different XP charts, and the rogue has the lowest requirement for XP, because the thought process behind that is they a lot of times put themselves in the most danger, because they got to sneak in to really get their best hit. They have to get up close, backstab, and that's where they're going to do their most damage. Cosmo doesn't do that a lot. He plays it a little bit more cautious, which is fine. But they have a lower XP requirement. So Cosmo will probably, if he doesn't get killed off, or the whole party get TPK'd, Cosmo will probably hit 10th level or higher before the rest of the party reaches 8th level. The requirements for some of the classes get pretty nuts. The Ranger is pretty high, and the Wizard is really high too. I think the only, and Dave, my buddy Dave, who plays Barry, will probably know better. I think the only class that might outdo the Wizard for XP requirements is the Paladin, and we don't have a regular Paladin in the group, which is too bad. I'd love to see one played out, because I think that's a really good class. But anyway, that was long-winded, but just kind of a funny caveat about Castles and Crusades and its XP, which is fine. My party has no problem with that. I enjoy it myself. But Cosmo's 8th level, so that's really cool. But that was the session. So we'll be playing this session, Castles Crusades, again on the 22nd of this month. Yeah, the 22nd. And so we'll pick it up from there. I appreciate everybody watching the videos. I never really do the YouTube thing about comment, like, share, all that stuff. But if you do that, I really appreciate it. I really appreciate the comments and engaging with folks that have been following along with our misadventures. So thanks a lot, and I'll catch you at the next one.